This fly is the dry pheasant tail variant. We're using a dry fly hook already mounted in the vise. I'm starting my thread base about 1/3 back from the hook eye and wrapping to the end of the shank. In this case, the end of the shank is pretty easy to identify. It's the position where the straight part of the hook and the curved part of the hook meet. You'll also notice that the thread the thread hangs just about even with the throat of the barb right there at that position. Let me wrap back to my starting point. I'm taking some fibers off of a hackle feather and measuring them so that they are as long as the complete hook. And binding them to the top of the shank. We'll trim a little bit of the waist and then cover wrap over that. The rib goes on next. I'm going to attach that to the bottom of the hook shank, and I'm substituting copper wire for silver as it's listed in the book. You can use whichever works best for you. The body will be pheasant tail fibers that I'm stripping from the stem and that I'm going to tie on the bottom of the shank. Notice that I'm pulling down on the fibers to keep them anchored there on the bottom of the shank. Now I'm kind of stroking the fibers to even them up, and I'll start wrapping forward to meet the thread, making sure each turn is tied against the previous turn. And when the fibers meet the thread, we'll tie that off. And trim the waist. Now we're counter wrapping the rib, and like the gray goose, the number of turns is not nearly important as the consistency in the spacing of our turns. And we've got those fairly well placed, and the turns are fairly even. And their purpose is to provide strength to the rather fragile pheasant tail. The last thing we're going to do is add the hackle, and we're tying that on, and I want you to notice that I'm leaving a little bit of bare stem right here. That's so the fibers will all lay nice and even as we wrap them forward. If you get a bunch of fibers sticking towards the back, your evaluator will not look favorably on that. See how that just kind of lays in place? Each turn now as I go forward is slightly closer. And if we happen to get a couple of turns that don't want to get with the program, that's why we have scissors. I'm going to pull this up straight to make my last turn and bind it in place with 3 turns of thread. And now I'm going to ease back on the hackle and the fibers and wrap a thread head there. And that will make a nice smooth head on this fly. And I'm going to use my whip finish tool to complete the whip finish and finish off the fly. Trim the waist. Finish up with a drop of Sally Hansen's head cement or fingernail polish, whichever way you want to call it, just to finish the fly there. And it looks pretty good. We have one little problem right here that I would recommend you trim away, that offending hackle that's sticking towards the back, so that your evaluator will smile at the fly. Here's the dry pheasant tail variant.